Hughes.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. This motion concerns affordable housing. It makes reference to government spending of $32 billion purportedly on housing. And there is one thing, I was in the chamber when I heard my friend, the member for Bennelong, talking about the fact that the current housing crisis has been due to poor government, and it's certainly something that I do agree with the member for Bennelong about. Because, Deputy Speaker, after 2 years of Labor and now a second Minister for Housing, housing affordability does indeed remain a national crisis in our country. This is a crisis that the federal government can fix and has failed to fix. Whether it be home ownership or rent, social, emergency housing, the failure by government to address supply shortages and instead spend more money on establishing funds and schemes. Labor governments always love establishing a fund, love a scheme. None of these funds or schemes are going to build any more houses. And the Prime Minister himself has had to admit to this failure on his housing policy by now introducing a new minister to try and fix this problem. Because, to recap, Deputy Speaker, in March 2022, Anthony Albanese went to the Australian people and said, under this government you will have cheaper mortgages and cheaper rents. What has happened since the May election? Average Australian households, those in my electorate of Hughes, have now paid more than $45,000 since his government was elected, and that is absolutely due to the 12 successive interest rate rises in a row that we have had under this government. And the interest rate rises, the Reserve Bank Governor last week said the inflation is remaining high and interest rates will need to remain higher for longer as a result of federal government and state government Labor overspending. It's spending in the wrong place. The former housing minister announced $10 billion for housing. What did this $10 billion amount to, Deputy Speaker? It was the establishing the Housing Australia Future Fund. But this has proven to be nothing but a $30 million spend on consultants and executives associated with that fund. It's proven to be jobs for Labor mates, both directly and indirectly. Wayne Swan is involved with the HAF in his dual role as both Labor Party president and also head of the CBUS Fund. CBUS, which has its own government issues. The board of CBUS, for example, has CFMEU directors on board. The CFMEU is massively contributing to inflating the housing costs. There's a 30% premium on all construction sites controlled by the CFMEU. But the government then wants to use CBUS funds to help with the housing fund. There should be no role for either the CBUS or the CFMEU in any of the government housing schemes. The new Minister for Housing has just re-announced the 1.2 million new homes for Australians. That's 240,000 homes that have to be built every year over 5 years. Back 8 years ago, we were building 240,000 homes per year. Now we'll be lucky this year to build 150,000 homes. And this government has failed on a very important factor going into housing affordability, which is to allow Australians the opportunity to use their superannuation, their own money, to invest in a home. And, Deputy Speaker, I just want to read to you a letter I've received recently from one of my constituents, Lynn from Engadine. She points out that her youngest daughter, also a Jenny, aged 51, has 3 children in their 20s. She's working full-time, a reasonably well-paid job. She has a husband who is retired. They're paying over $1,200 per week rent. She said, "My daughter has never been able to own a property. She has a good amount of super, though, but she's unable to be able to save any more for the deposit because of the huge amounts that she's paying in rent. However, if she could access her superannuation, she could now be into a home." So what I say, Deputy Speaker, to Lynn and her daughter and Lynn's grandchildren is that this coalition, if in government, we will allow people to access their superannuation, which is their own money. We will allow Australians to have a choice as to whether or not they keep their money in superannuation or whether they use it to purchase a home. This will allow first home buyers into the market, and it will also allow women who are coming out of a divorce or need to start their life again. It will allow women, older women, the opportunity to also purchase their own home. This is a housing affordability crisis, Deputy Speaker. It's a housing affordability crisis that this government has failed to address.
The time allotted for this debate has expired.